This is the Paul McGuire Report. I'm Paul McGuire. On today's program, we're going to connect the dots regarding the Vegas mass shooting. We're going to take a look at who this shooter was, and most importantly, we're going to analyze it, unlike the mainstream media, which simply is a propaganda parrot that squawks endlessly. The mainstream media, never telling the truth. I don't mean to laugh in light of such a tragedy, but that's basically the truth about the mainstream media. It's propaganda. Always propaganda. Always a slant. Always a hidden agenda. Twisting the truth. Manipulating images. Choosing to omit certain very important facts, and then choosing to highlight either erroneous facts or just making stuff up. So let's begin by going through a brief overview of what happened in the Vegas shooting. And then after that, we're going to zoom in on particular facts, or at least alleged facts. And our purpose is that we want to analyze this in the light of truth, not with a hidden bias or a hidden agenda or a propaganda message. We simply want to look at it and ask the questions that need to be asked, because let's remember this. When we talk about truth, Jesus Christ said these words. I repeat them often on the program. Jesus Christ said, "If you know the truth shall set you free." Now, of course, the primary truth that Jesus Christ was talking about was the truth that every man or woman needs a Savior, Jesus Christ, and needs to ask God for forgiveness of their sins and to receive Christ by faith as their personal Lord and Savior. Unfortunately, many Christians put a period there, but Jesus would not have done that. When he talked about the truth, he was talking about the truth of salvation and all truth. And this is the imperative to understand, all truth. So true spirituality, not this counterfeit evangelical spirituality, but true spirituality, true biblical spirituality doesn't compartmentalize truth. Anything in reality, our reality, that is true, is truth that sets you free. Now again, eternal salvation is the most important truth. But truths regarding how to cure disease, truths regarding any number of facts will set you free, because then you can make a decision. You see, when you're getting propaganda, and propaganda is a more creative words for lies, when you're being given a series of television images, internet images, radio sound bites, television news programs, where it's propaganda, twisting of the truth, and twisting of the truth means it's a lie. If you're being bombarded with lies 24/7, you can't possibly be free. I mean, that's a complete disconnect from reality. You can't possibly be free because you have no clue what's going on. And therefore, any decision, any appraisal, any perception you make, you might as well be living on Mars, because you're clueless, because you don't have any facts. Facts are truth. So let's give a look at what's going on. This is a tragedy, a severe tragedy. And as we go through this, we're not going to simply accept the propaganda mainstream media interpretation, because it's corrupt. That's just not everybody's corrupt. Not everybody's a propagandist. But I would say the overwhelming majority of the mainstream media is a propaganda machine, just like Hitler had propaganda machines. Okay, so let's look at some of the facts and events regarding this Vegas shooter. Now, first of all, the biggest questions that emerge, and many of you have seen reporting and photographs and video, et cetera, et cetera. So, and you've read internet articles and watched YouTubes to get all kinds of information. So you're already in the process of connecting the dots regarding the Vegas shooting. You're already in the process of trying to compute a motive and a reason and why did this happen, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a good thing, because that means you're alive and you're thinking. You're not just accepting what's being spoon-fed to you by the mainstream media. Okay, so the first observation that I have, and the mainstream media has acknowledged this, not necessarily for the right reasons, but they have acknowledged it, and that is whatever happened. And I think there's a lot of big question marks regarding whatever happened. Again, I'm not a law enforcement expert. I'm not a police analyst or an analyst in, these shootings and things like that. That's not my field or area of expertise, but I am an analytical person and I have a brain which I use. And I don't buy a lot of what I'm being told. I'm suspicious about it. I'm not saying that it's not true. It's just I'm not sold on what I'm being told. I wouldn't buy it if it was a product. If somebody was trying to sell me a car, I wouldn't buy a car from some of the reports that I've heard. For example, the law enforcement officer, a number of them have come forward and immediately and emphatically stated that this shooting was done by one individual. Now, just using common sense, given the complexity of the situation, because it was a complex situation, and given the fact that it's blatantly obvious that this was a well-planned, well-organized, well-thought-out operation, and given the reality that this guy, the shooter, or the person they're saying is the shooter, maybe he is the shooter, maybe he was one of the shooters, I don't know. Was he acting alone? I think making an emphatic announcement that he was, when here's a method of analysis of anything. You see, when I define myself by saying I'm not a police expert or a expert who analyzes automatic weapons and military and criminal shooting type operations. That's not my expertise. But I do have highly developed analytical abilities where I can see having developed analytical abilities in any field, and many of you have developed analytical abilities in certain fields. Not often, but sometimes those are transferable concepts to something else. So when I see somebody in law enforcement jump immediately before the camera, which was the day of the shooting, and then subsequently after that, and declaring emphatically that this was done by one shooter, immediately the alarm bells go off. Not because I'm a munitions expert or professional in that business, simply because how, with such a complex situation, with so many facts that are obviously not in, with so many questions that beg to be answered and have not been answered, how can you logically come to a conclusion that it was only one gunman so emphatically. It's not like they said, oh, well, we think it's one gunman. It's one thing to get before the TV cameras and say, we think it's one gunman. And it's a completely another thing to say, in a factual manner, it was one gunman, end of story. That's suspicious. That in itself is suspicious, because to use a Hollywood directing, acting industry expression, it's too on the nose. And I've shared this with you on the program before. The term being on the nose in the film business or the acting business in Hollywood means this. It's when a script or a screenplay or when an actor is not a very good actor or a very good screenplay writer. So there's no subtlety, there's no nuance, there's no reality to their dialogue or to the way the actor's acting. The actor, when they're too on the nose, either in the words that they're given to speak or the screenplay, they don't sound like the words that people use in real life. The actor isn't acting like a person would act in real life, experiencing something. He's telegraphing, or he's overdoing it. Even if it's a subtle overdoing it, it's noticeable. And people go, well, that person is like not a very good actor, because the old expression used to be they're hammy or they're hams. They think they're good, but they're not any good, because the great actors and the great screenplay writers, they don't call attention to their work or themselves by over emotion or like you know, many times the best thing to happen in the film is silence and allow the background or the subtext to communicate the message. So when this law enforcement officer jumps in front of the camera so quickly to say it was just one gunman, that's on the nose. See, it becomes conspicuous. If he had simply said, we think, at present, we think it was one gunman, that would have been, it wouldn't have called attention to itself. It wouldn't have been on the nose. But when you don't have the facts, and everybody knows you don't have the facts, and you have made a public statement saying it's one gunman, that's on the nose. And the fact that it's on the nose is like a flashing red light saying, whoa, something's not right here. Because if he was really good at his job, of whatever his job is, PR, you know, communications with the public or whatever, he wouldn't have done it that way. The very fact that he said on behalf of law enforcement that they knew it was one gunman, end of story, is flashing warning lights that something's not right. That's not right. That's weird. Okay? Based on all the stuff that has not been investigated. Now, I am not saying that this is the case. Listen to me carefully. I'm not saying that this is the case. But I am saying that when somebody in law enforcement and authority gets before the camera and very early on after the incident and declares emphatically that it was one gunman, that leads any person with a thinking mind to ask the question, gee, he certainly seemed in an awful hurry to declare that statement. And again, I'm not suggesting that this is the case, but anybody with a brain would begin to ask questions based on his on-the-nose remarks. And then you say, well, it sounds like Again, I'm not saying this is the case, but it sounds like, based on what this law enforcement officer was saying, that it was one gunman, it sounds like they already made up their mind about who did it before the event happened. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, why would you, in an almost pre-rehearsed fashion, like you were reading, like you're law enforcement, but you're reading from a script that you were told to read, why would you announce so prematurely and so emphatically that it was one gunman? See, it calls attention to itself, because that's not real in any area of life, especially given the facts that are out there. So again, I'm not saying that the law enforcement officer is incorrect. He may be totally correct. It may have been one gunman, end of story. But he seemed in an awful hurry, and in such a hurry that it was almost as if, and I'm not saying that somebody planned it this way, but it came off as if they planned it this way. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I'm not saying that, well, gee, this was all planned and he got up there and that was their strategy for him to say it was one gunman. I'm not saying that that's a fact. I'm not even suggesting that that's the case. But when you rush to judgment like that prematurely, it leads any thinking person to ask the question, well, did you make up your mind? Was this like pre-rehearsed? Because the behavior and timing is odd, along with the emphatic declaration. So question marks arise. Now, it may be nothing more than the desire of law enforcement to calm people down. I have no idea. There's so many other possible explanations for it. But that's one thing. Now, another thing that comes to mind as we look at all the dots of the Vegas shooting is that the Mandalay Hotel and that area in Las Vegas has massive security, massive surveillance cameras everywhere. And they don't have half-baked security. They have the best security in the world, because the Vegas casinos and the hotels and stuff, they know all of, the Vegas Strip with all the hotels and casinos, and they know that they're one of the world's, or they used to be the world's #1 tourist destination. And they may still be. So that means they have more people coming from all over the world to be there. And people who some come with a lot of money to spend. A lot of high rollers move through that town. And so they're dealing with lots of money in the gambling casinos. So they want to protect their investment. They have the best, I'm telling you right now, they have the best security systems, security teams that money can buy. So given that, how is it this guy is able to book the 2 adjoining hotel rooms and bring up a massive amount of ammunition and guns, which he could not possibly have made in one trip? And it would have been conspicuous. What was it, 24 assault weapons? Who knows how many rounds of ammunition? And the best security money could buy didn't pick it up. And then you ask yourself the other question. After 9/11, we have the surveillance state. Everything you and I do, and every American does, is under 24/7 surveillance through the collection of metadata. I don't care what the official answer is, okay? That's not the case. I've heard people testify before Congress. No, we're not collecting data on Americans, without some kind of legal authority. I don't believe that for a minute. Do you believe that for a minute? Because if you do, I'm going to suggest something to you. You either need to sleep a little longer every day so your mind is clear, or get on a nutritional program or something, because you're not thinking very clearly. Let's forget about surveillance and crime and stuff like that. Let's just talk about your life when you use your cell phone, when you use the internet and other things, and how all your personal data is constantly being shared and sold with other companies. And you know that's the case. And I'll give you a couple of reasons why you know it's the case. You get telemarketing phone calls from all these companies. Who gave them your phone number? You get pop-up ads when you're on the internet that are personalized, or they attempt to personalize them for the things that you're interested in. So somebody is selling information, deep information all about you. Psychological profiles. You say, oh, that's a conspiracy. No, we're not talking about the fact that you had a traumatic experience in childhood, but maybe we are, I don't know. But we're talking about your psychological profile. You have a need for adventure and travel. Okay, so you're going to get a lot of pop-up ads offering you vacation packages and travel and adventure vacation packages. You can go on a safari in Africa or bungee jump off the Eiffel Tower. I don't know what you want to do, but the ads will be designed for you. And if you're not aware of that, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's like you need to stop drinking with the water with the fluoride, because you should be aware of it. Whenever you use your search engine, and I don't care which search engine it is, Google especially, all of a sudden, there's all this ads and emails being directed. How many of you, on a regular basis, now I'm assuming that you're using the internet at least an hour a day. If you're not using the internet, well, you're not going to be getting all the ads and the pop-ups, because you're not generating any activity or information that people can collect and sell. And by the way, it may be totally legal for them to do that, because let's be honest, how many of us actually read these ridiculously lengthy disclosure contracts that we have to not sign, but we have to click a check mark box? I agree to the terms and conditions of blah, 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 blah. And it always happens when you're using products like Google and YouTube and Facebook and Adobe and a million other things, okay? We don't sit there and read it because, first of all, we're not lawyers. Second of all, it's written in such complicated language. They are usually telling us in legal mumbo jumbo that they are going to spy on you. Well, they don't use the word spy. They're going to collect data on you, and they're going to give it people. And their cop-out line, their fake, well, their lie is, we need this data to share it with our whatever partners or companies. And here's the lie line, so that we can make your internet experience more enjoyable. More enjoyable? Come on, man, give me a break. That's the dumbest lie I ever heard in my life. You're collecting all my data, selling it to advertisers, making billions of dollars a year because you're collecting everybody else's data, and you're doing it to make our internet experience more enjoyable. No, you're not. What you're doing is, at the very least, Only God knows what you're really doing. You're sending me pop-up ads. You're sending me emails. You're sending me, it's like stuff that I would be interested in. So like I'm interested in a lot of stuff. But if on a particular day, let's say I want to do research on the best vitamins to take that the body absorbs and in what dosages. Okay, so let's say I spend 15 to 30 minutes looking at health websites and I do comparison reviews. You think I believe the official pharmaceutical company, WebMD stuff? Do you think I believe that? No, of course not. Do you think when it's some government thing and they tell you, this is their assessment on vitamins, you think I believe that? No. I go to alternative media, and I know a whole bunch of web and health websites that have integrity. And then I will compare the different ones to make sure that they're in agreement. And then I might contrast it with what I consider the propaganda ones from big pharma, the big drug companies, or the big food companies or whatever, to arrive at the truth. There's just so many websites. When I see who's sponsoring it, I wouldn't give 5 seconds I wouldn't even think for a moment it would be credible. But the point I'm trying to make, after I spend 30 minutes doing that, I'm bombed with solicitations in my emails for special deals and discounts on vitamin packages and pop-ups, and they're very good at, like, you can go to Drudge Report and you can click an article from, let's say, an English paper or the New York Times or whatever, and you go to any of these websites, New York Times or an English paper or whatever, and you'll see pop-up ads that are personalized to you. Okay, so we know they have all those capacities of collecting data. In addition, this may disturb you, but some of you need to wake up. I keep my phone, I try to keep my phone mic off. I mean, not when I'm talking to people, obviously, but I avoid talking to, like Siri and stuff like that. And what I've noticed is that I've had conversations with people who have one of the latest Apple phones or whatever, okay? One of the iPhones. And also, the Verizon phones and stuff like that. And so what I've noticed is that you can have a verbal conversation. Now listen carefully, it's spooky. I know for a fact, and it's not just me, I'm just paying attention to it. I know for a fact because I've had verbal conversations. And then I was talking with a number of people, and we began to notice that like 15 minutes to 20 minutes after you would have verbal conversations. And let's say in those verbal conversations, you mentioned, I'm not a golfer, but let's say you mentioned, you talked about golfing and, what golf resorts you like to go to and golf balls and stuff like that, hypothetically. Or let's say some more female conversation and you're talking about where to get the best prices on female shoes, let's say designer shoes at a really low cost, and you talk about your favorite brands and stuff. Okay, so this goes on a continual basis. 15 minutes, 20 minutes later after you've had that conversation, and maybe your cell phone was lying on the table next to you or whatever, all of a sudden you start to getting these specific ads selling you the very products you were talking about. And it happens over and over and over again, so it's not a fluke. And you realize, gee, my laptop wasn't on, my TV isn't on, what I noticed is that every time I talk about certain stuff, my cell phone is on, and my cell phone is recording data from the conversation, putting it in some kind of memory bank, and firing ads at me. You think it's spooky? Man, it's happening to all of you. You may not have noticed it yet. And we could go on and on and on. So you're telling me with all that kind of surveillance? Oh, and let's talk about another one. I was reading an article about Google and a bunch of other search engines and stuff like that. And it was not printed. The article was not printed in any of the American mainstream newspapers. Typical. It was not on any American mainstream media, TV, etc. In fact, the whole story was like censored from the American mainstream media. So I was going to Drudge Report, and I saw an intriguing headline because he connects with British newspapers and stuff. And so I clicked this very well-known, well-established British newspaper, and they have a whole expose article on Google and a bunch of other companies. And they're telling me that if you use Google or any of these other companies, that they're secretly storing so much more information about you than you realize. Okay? And then they tell you how you can find out, how you can go into your search engine. And they specifically, step by step, tell you how to open up and look at the data that they're collecting on you. Okay? Now, I knew they were collecting a lot of it, but I went into the screen and my mind was blown because it was I knew theoretically they were doing it, but it's one thing to know it theoretically, and an entirely different thing to know that it is being done way, way beyond what you could possibly think. So I didn't know they were tracking all this stuff. I never gave them permission. They give themselves permission, and I'm sure legally they're totally in the clear because, after all, they put it in these contracts that none of us read. So I'm opening up all these pages in my search engine because this British newspaper told me how, and I'm shocked at what I see. I see all kinds of personal records and material, okay? But that's not the point. They're collecting it and giving it away to people and sending me ads and stuff. That's the disturbing part. See, they're collecting so much more information on me than I had any idea of. But not only that, they're selling that private information. And I'll give you an example. As I'm playing around with it, I click, I realize that the map device and, the various devices which tells you how to drive from one place to another, or GPS systems that your phone might have, or what else, Google Maps and the other maps, stuff like when you're driving, you can see where you are and stuff. Okay, so probably many of you have used like Google Earth, and there's competitors of that. And you click some buttons and you can see, a visual picture of a storefront or a home or whatever, okay? And then you can do even more than that. You can like make it go down the street. You can get a street view, or you can get an aerial satellite view and other views. So you can play with the mouse or, direct it from your laptop, and you can travel down the street, and you can turn to the right or left, and you can see 360 degrees, houses and everything else. And just as a side note, I'm going to throw this in. You notice on Google Maps, it's supposed to be, that's the satellite view where you're looking down on planet Earth from the point of view of a satellite, and you can zoom in. Now, they don't want you to know how far and how clearly they can zoom in. So they give you kind of it's a real aerial view, but you're deceived into thinking, and most of the companies do this, that they can only see certain things from outer space. And so if you're looking at an aerial view, you know, it doesn't quite come in real close to like read your license plate number. It will on the street, but it won't do it from an aerial view. So you make the false assumption that they can't see, you know, personal items. Well, I already covered this in a book I wrote, From Earthquakes to Global Unity, I don't know, written 20 years ago, Bible prophecy book, where I said, and once again, nobody believed me back then because it was 20 years ago, I said from outer space, they have surveillance satellites that can clearly see you in your backyard, and they can tell you from outer space whether you're cooking a steak, chicken, or hamburger on your barbecue. And you know, typical thing, people are going, oh, you're a conspiracy theory, we don't believe you. I get this all the time. I wrote this 20 years ago because I knew it was true. And I'd seen it afterwards. So when I'm seeing the pictures of Google Earth search and stuff, I'm not seeing them go in with that clarity. They're deliberately making it less visible when you get really close up from outer space. And I know that's baloney. That's to make you think they can't see stuff. But the reality is they could press a button and they can literally see. Look, this is not an exaggeration. You need to hear what I'm saying, okay? This is a fact. This is where we are in science and technology. They can, from a satellite in outer space, listen up, pay attention, turn your brain on. They can see from outer space. If you were holding up your cell phone, okay, and you were dialing in a particular number on your cell phone and you were standing outside, okay, or if you were watching a video on your cell phone, or looking at a picture or a map on your cell phone. But let's just go back to, let's say you're dialing a number on your cell phone. They can, and they've been able to do this for years, see your finger, your cell phone, the numbers you're dialing. They can see it and record it from outer space. And don't go into, you know, Mary Poppins land and say that's not true. It's a fact, baby. Wake up and smell the coffee. They can do that. And they've been able to do it for a long time. All right? So get used to it. Now, the point that I'm making is they make you think that they don't have that capacity. Because if you use Google Earth or any of the other, you know, point of views from an aerial point of view, from a satellite, you can't see it. So you assume, oh, they haven't got the technology yet to do that. Well, that's just to fool you. All right. So I'm playing around, looking at internal data in my search engine. And guess what I see? I see pictures of every place that I've driven, every store which I visited, any place I've walked in. I'm seeing countless, going back years, I'm seeing countless numbers of pictures of like the Walmart that I went to, or the Starbucks that I went to. Fortunately, I don't have anything to hide, thank God, because they're tracking everything. And I never knew this. I should have known it, you know. I should have known it, but you can only, I mean, I can't devote my life to this. I should have known that the minute I acted, see, because I chose to deliberately on my cell phone not activate like search engines and GPS and stuff, and basically keep it as a just to call people and receive calls. But then I decided, you know what, since I'm travel to speak at Bible prophecy conferences so much in churches and stuff, I better activate the Google Earth search, and I activated a bunch of other stuff, okay? You know, Google MapQuest and stuff. Okay, so when I did that, I did not know, by making that activation, that there were going to be pictures of every place that I've visited and addresses and all kinds of information. So I'm looking at like a 7-Eleven I went to in LA, or the 7-Eleven I stopped at 3 in the morning when I was catching a flight from LAX to speak at a conference somewhere. But guess what else I saw? Now I live in Southern California, LA, right? So what I noticed was that, wow, I'm seeing pictures. You know, I speak in all these states, like Colorado Springs in Colorado, and I'm going to be speaking at the Prophecy Watchers, the big conference coming up October 13th in Oklahoma, Norman, Oklahoma, which you can still sign up to go to, and you should definitely sign up for the live streaming. 36 hot Bible prophecy teachers and speakers, many well-known names. I'll be speaking there also. But I've been to Oklahoma City, I don't know, countless times for Bible prophecy, visiting ministries to do their television shows. And I'm noticing 7-Elevens or the burrito taco store that I grabbed a lunch in the last time I was in Oklahoma City. I'm seeing a pictorial history of everything I've done in my life. And more. There's so much more personal stuff. And I'm horrified. But guess what? You see, I had this instinctual sense when I activated the GPS and the MapQuest and all that. I had this instinctual sense that, you know, Paul, even before I activated it, I had this sense that, look, don't be an idiot, Paul. This is how I talk to myself, so don't get offended. I'm not calling you an idiot. I'm calling myself an idiot in an internal conversation. I said, don't be an idiot, Paul. You got a cell phone. It's got GPS. It's tracking your every move and recording it. So, and we're going to tie this into the Vegas thing. So, I instinctually said, you know what? I didn't like the idea of being recorded everywhere. So I began a habit of turning the cell phone off or not bringing it with me, etc., etc. So there's no data being collected. Now, again, not because I'm hiding something, but because I don't like to be tracked. Okay, so, and then when I found out I was being tracked anyway, with pictures of where I was going, etc., etc. I mean, you need to check this out. You need to learn how to open up your search engine and whatever. Your mouth will hang open when you see the data they're collecting on you. Okay, so I said all this to say that when one of the heads of the intelligence agencies was testifying before Congress during a hearing, I don't remember the guy's name or whatever, but he declared emphatically that the intelligence agencies were not collecting data on millions of Americans unless there was a specific need or they got some legal authority. Because he was asked the question, I believe it was something like, are you collecting metadata on all Americans all the time? And his answer was no. But that was a lie, because they are. That's what it's all about. See, you got to understand, you're under surveillance whether you know it or not. The name of the game is you record metadata. That means all the data there is on every person in America and who knows, the world, and you record it 24/7 from their cell phone, from their laptop, from spying devices, from your HD screen television that you don't know, that for longer than you want to know, has had a camera built into it and has been watching you while you're watching television and listening to you while you're watching television. don't say, oh, that's paranoid. No, that's called a fact, because it was going on a long time. But, you know, just like with your laptop or your home computer, and now with all the new flat screen TVs, you have a little camera. You can go on Skype on your laptop or whatever. But that camera can be turned on 24/7. It's not recording you visually and with audio just when it's lit up. It's doing it all the time. And now with all these new TVs, you can surf the internet. You can go on Skype through your flat screen HD TV. You can interact with your TV like you would your laptop. And now people used to say, oh, Paul, you're a liar when you're saying there's a camera built in spying you, video recording you from your TV. No, I wasn't lying. I just happened to know what I was talking about. But all these people who doubted what I said, oh, they realized it was true, because now they know that their camera has, that their flat screen TV has a camera built into it and audio recording, because it has a little light that lights up. So you can use your HD flat screen TV like you would your laptop or your cell phone. You can go on Facebook or YouTube and they can see your face and you can talk to people. They know the technology is there, but what they don't know is that the off button or the power off button means nothing in all these devices. And what they don't know is that the little green light or whatever color it is that goes on when you're being recorded by one of your electronic devices, including your TV or your car, the stuff that comes from the car dealer, okay, not the add-ons. And what you don't know is that light notifying you that you're being recorded, video and audio, doesn't have to be on for you to be recorded. And neither does the power have to be on for you to be recorded. Okay, so we know all that. And so when this head of one of the intelligence agencies says we're not collecting metadata on everybody, he was lying. He was accused of lying. They didn't do anything, because this is their philosophy. We use everything. Satellite, just think of every electronic device you could possibly imagine, like the smart meter, like the satellites, like the cameras that are not supposed to be there in LA you notice anywhere you drive in the United States, you can barely notice it, but up where the traffic lights are, there's these very miniature, small, hardly noticeable cameras. They don't even look like cameras. Now, everybody knew the cameras where they had the big signs, warning, you're being photographed at an intersection, and they take pictures of you if you went through a red light or whatever. In a lot of places like LA, lawsuits happened and they were forced to take those obnoxious cameras down, but they still have the surveillance cameras there. So everything you do and say is being recorded. And I don't have time to list the instrumentation. You can go to paulmcguire.us and read my book, Mass Awakening, read my book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, read Standing Down Goliath, pre-order the brand new book, Conquering the Matrix, and I go through all the devices. So the thing is, and I know this was a long-winded way to get there, is that that should tell you alone, just for commercial reasons, all these companies, okay, listen to me very carefully, all these companies, a huge percentage of their corporate profits come from selling your personal information, okay? So that tells you right there, you're under surveillance far more than you know, just because people want to make money. But you see, there are buyers out there, like political parties, that want to know what your political beliefs are, okay? So you're under surveillance regarding your political beliefs, because big political campaigns and big political parties are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get data on your political beliefs. They want to know what percentage of Americans want gun control, what percentage don't, and we could go on and on and on. Here's another thing. If you start looking up innocently on a search engine, what foods, what nutrition, what vitamins, what herbs or whatever strengthen your immune system and protect you from getting cancer or whatever disease you want to name. Well, that information is not only coming to you in the form of pop-up ads to sell you products, but it's big pharmaceutical companies are buying it for various reasons. So they're profiling your health concerns. So the point is, just looking at it from a commercial, monetary, or political basis, your data is being collected and stored 24/7. That's a reality. Don't fight the truth. That's the reality. So when this head of the intel agency was asked, are you spying on Americans 24/7 to collect metadata? He lied. And now, what is metadata? Metadata is they record everything about you from every possible source, not because you're a criminal, not because you did something wrong, and they store it in massive, massive computers, like in Utah. And this is their philosophy. It's kind of like Minority Report with Tom Cruise. In the event that you would commit a crime in the future, or a terrorist act, or whatever, okay? Now listen carefully. Or let's say you went crazy and you robbed a bank. They would be able to access anybody's information. Look at where you were via a video camera. Look at everything, okay? Your GPS, where you were at such and such a time when this bank was being robbed. So they want to collect the metadata. It's like pre-crime in Minority Report, so that they can go back in time and look at the aerial shots from the satellites. Where was your car parked on that day? All kinds of stuff. Now, I've said all of that to say this. We have erected this massive surveillance state, and everything that I said and far more than I said is going on, such as the ability for laptops and televisions and technology. And you're going to freak out. Many of you are going to be saying, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. And I get this all the time. I live with this, so it doesn't really bother me. because I'll say something, I'll be accused of being a conspiracy theorist, and then 20 years later, they'll realize that I was right. They've already printed articles on the internet. And whenever they begin to hint or indicate they can do something, the rule of thumb is if they come out and announce that they can do something or they're about to do something, the reality is they've probably been able to do it already for the last 20 years. Just rule of thumb. So all of your electronic devices, your cell phone, your laptop, your television, the new ones, and many more devices, and I want you to listen carefully because this is important. They can now read your mind. No, I'm not paranoid, okay? Now, we don't know how clearly they can read your mind. So let's just start with the minimal that we know they can do on a factual basis, okay? And we'll go from there. At a minimum level, rock bottom minimal level, we know for a fact that the technology is fully operational and has been for quite a time, that all of your electronic devices that you communicate with, audio, video, computer stuff, or TV, they can read your brain waves, okay? Because your body is transmitting electronically whatever brainwave state you're in. So if you're in like a positive vibe mood, your brain is broadcasting a 10 Hz alpha wave. All your electronic instruments can pick up that. Let's say you're freaked out and you're agitated and you're angry and you're about ready to yell at your cat. Most likely that would, hypothetically, you would be generating some kind of beta brainwave, which is a different frequency. let's say you're like serene and meditative and calm. That could possibly be a theta brainwave state or a delta. And then there's really high ones and low ones. All the electronic stuff that we're talking about can read that because it's simply it's like an idiot-proof thing, man. You can buy little devices on the internet that can measure people's brain waves electronically. This is no big deal. They just have the technology in your cell phone. So they know what like your mood is that day. Now, but they also have the technology, and they've been saying, and I believe it's a lie because I researched this stuff, that they need, in order to capture this particular kind of information, they need to attach electrodes to your scalp. Nonsense. They have had the ability to employ computer brain wireless interfaces. And they talk about it all the time on the internet. So I'm not like making up science fiction stuff. They act like it, the news stories act like it's a big breakthrough. No, it was running. It was operational 20 years ago. So they can look into your dream state. They can look into your mind and subconscious, and they can record visual imagery from your dream state, your mind, and your subconscious and conscious mind. Listen to me carefully. They can record visual imagery. In other words, they can read your mind to some degree. And they can also pick up language and lettering from your brain to whatever degree. Now, when I say whatever degree is, we don't know for a fact how clear the visuals they pick up from brain scanning are. We don't know how clear the lettering and language they pick up is when they're, in effect, reading your mind. Okay? We don't know how clear it is. Is it like at a primitive stage where it's like ghost-like, faded images or just patterns of energy fields? That may be as far as they've taken it. So don't get freaked out. I haven't jumped off the deep end. We don't know how clear they can read the mind, but they can. You've seen the apps now. You can be on a cell phone and you can buy an app to detect electronically if somebody's lying. It's more effective than a lie detector. That's reading your mind. But I'm going to give you a hypothetical theory based on the rule of thumb law I apply. When they begin to announce something publicly, and everything I just told you in the last 3 minutes has been announced to one degree or another, sometimes obscurely, publicly, that usually means that it's been operational for 10 or 20 years. Now, I can't prove this. I can't state it as a fact, and I'm not stating it as a fact, but it is my personal hypothesis based on my research is that they have technology that can read your mind, your subconscious, etc., with far more clarity in terms of visual imagery and phonetic sounds and words and letters. Far, far more clearly, approaching the clarity of watching a movie or listening to a record or a radio program. Now, when I say approaching that level of clarity, I think it's probably an overly unrealistic projection to say that they've gotten that far, but they could have. I would say, again, based on theory, because I don't know for a fact, that they can do it, but it's somewhat, the visual imagery is somewhat obscure, the audio is somewhat difficult to capture. So we don't know how clear it is, but we do know, because they've already released the information, that it's clear enough to gather information. And now let's just leave that there. Now let's go back. And by the way, this is in my book that you can still pre-order, Conquering the Matrix. Okay, so let's go back to the Vegas shooting. All of this surveillance technology, the all-seeing eye. You think they were joking when the Illuminati put the pyramid on the back of the U.S. dollar, and it's an all-seeing eye of Lucifer. And at the base of the pyramid, it says New World Order. You think that was just you think it was just the all-seeing eye of Lucifer, or did it have like a triple or quadruple meaning? I think it had a triple or quadruple meaning, because it's yes, definitely the all-seeing eye of Lucifer, but it's telling you it's all-seeing. You're constantly being watched by Lucifer, just like you're constantly being watched by God. God sees everything all the time. But Lucifer and the people who serve him see more and more. It's the beginning of the beast system in Revelation 13. In fact, DARPA, one of the military intelligence research groups, they used to use in their logo, I think they changed it, but it was like outrageous. Their logo was a picture of planet Earth, the words DARPA on the top, and then there was a very large pyramid hanging in outer space with the all-seeing eye of Lucifer looking at the entire planet Earth with like a scanning beam of light, reading all of planet Earth. So that was a surveillance organization whose logo was the all-seeing eye of Lucifer in the pyramid, scanning all of Earth. I mean, you can do the math on that. So everything is under 27 surveillance. So they can go back to the Vegas shooter. Okay, let's talk about pragmatics now. They go back to the Vegas shooter. They can go back as many years as they want. I mean, I don't know how many years. Let's say they can go back 10 years or 15 years. We know for a fact they went back to 2011. That's a fact because they captured a picture of him walking into one of the hotels. I think it was the Mandalay Hotel, and falling or something. It's up on the internet. So they've recovered video footage of him in the interior of the hotel falling from 2011. So we know for a fact they went back to 2011. But they can also go back in time because they're collecting metadata on everybody, and they can show you the visuals from out. No, they're not going to show it to you, but they could show you if they wanted to. The satellite visuals would show you his car driving, the shooter's car driving, what was it, from Mesquite, Nevada, kind of a retirement community where he had a second home, to the Mandalay Hotel and parking. How many times he drove back and forth. They have that. They can retrieve that anytime they want. They can retrieve from the interior of the parking lot cameras, as well as the exterior from outer space, from a satellite, how many times after he checked into the hotel did he take packages or satchels or stuff for his rifles and bullets, etc.? How many times did he go back and forth from the car? How many trips did he make? And they can retrieve endless information going back in the past before the actual event happened. They can retrieve the airport photography, the video cameras from the airport when they checked into where they supposedly went to Dubai together, him and his girlfriend. And they can go back in time. Just like I told you, I saw pictures of all the stores that I drove to or went to. They could retrieve instantly, within 15 minutes, within 5 minutes after the crime. Any investigator or law enforcement who had the proper access could have looked into his computer analytics, his search engine, and tell you where he was all that day, the day before, the week before, so on and so forth. What stores, they could go back and see which gun stores he bought the guns in or what gun show he bought the guns in. Okay, all the data is available. So they have an amazing amount of information by which they can analyze the event. Now, here is where we get into questions. But that background had to be communicated. We're going to get back in a moment to the questions about the data that has been publicly released. In just a second, you're listening to the Paul McGuire Report. I'm Paul McGuire. Visit paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us. We have thousands of pages of free articles for you. Our church meetings, Paradise Mountain Church meetings, the conferences I'm speaking at, like the big Prophecy Watchers Conference, October 13th in Oklahoma. You can sign up for the live streaming. There's 36 big prophecy speakers. I'm speaking in 3 sessions. You can sign up for the live streaming. I don't know if it's sold out for physical attendance, but if you go to paulmcguire.us, we have a big ad on the conference, and you can click it and link to anything you want. Okay, so and we also have books for you at bulk discount. And we're going to be back in just a second to ask very important questions about the Vegas shooting. This is Paul McGuire. You're listening to the Paul McGuire Report. All right, this is Paul McGuire. You're listening to the Paul McGuire Report. And you can go to paulmcguire.us for all kinds of additional information, archives of the audio program. You can send this program to anybody you choose to for free. We have books and articles and all kinds of things. And if you choose to partner with us in presenting the truth, not only as we analyze current events from the perspective of Bible prophecy, but reaching people with the gospel of Jesus Christ, you can choose to support the spreading of the truth versus the spreading of propaganda by making a contribution or donation to our ministry. And you can do that at paulmcguire.us. All right, let's go. Let's review many questions. Now, first of all, when you see the pictures that have been released inside the shooter's hotel room, it's a very interesting montage of photographs, especially when you go to a website where you keep clicking it and it plays the pictures in sequence that the law enforcement revealed. Now, I have numerous questions. I'm sure you have numerous questions, and many people have numerous questions. Again, the law enforcement official stating that they believed it's only one gunman. I mean, really? Are you joking? And then this was my first impression when I reviewed the law enforcement release of the photographs inside the shooter's Mandalay Bay hotel rooms. He got 2 adjoining rooms, as you know. The first thing I noticed was they had a picture of the shooter who supposedly committed suicide. Now, it's interesting that when you look at the picture, it's conspicuous once again because it's odd. There's a picture of his body lying on the ground. Again, I'm not a forensic expert or something like that, but like the posture, the way his body is lying on the floor strikes me as somewhat odd and unnatural. But I'm not an expert in that field, so I'm not going to take it any further. I'm just giving you my gut reaction. Like the body may have been moved, or somebody spread his arms out or something, kind of posing the dead body. Again, I'm not an expert in that area. I could be completely off the wall, but that's my gut question. I'm not saying it was, but it immediately caused me to, I noticed it. It raised a question to me. And then I noticed that in that, I don't want to use the word shot, in that photograph of the dead Vegas gunman, you don't see his head. That's totally cropped out of the picture. I thought that was very unusual. I didn't see any explanation as to why that was the case. So again, my gut reaction and my gut question was, and I'm not making an accusation because there may be logical reasons for it, but I found it very conspicuous. Okay, so here's the thing. You're giving us the first inside glimpse of what happened inside the hotel room where the Vegas shooter was shooting at the crowd from. And one of the first pictures, if not the first picture that you see in the montage, is the body of the shooter who they say committed suicide. Now, there's only one photograph of the body. That's odd, because that's the primary, that's more important than anything that's in the room, is the guy who shot everybody. And I wouldn't believe this in a million years. They weren't hiding his head because of some gruesome thing, all right? They could have thrown a blanket over, or no, a towel or whatever, a cloth over his head if it was something gruesome. But no, they eclipsed almost from the neck up. The photograph is cropped in such a way that you can't even see his head. And they didn't even bother to take another picture where you could see his head. You could have actually, if you had a problem and you had to crop part of it, because it was a space problem with the photograph, you could have moved back 4 feet and captured his head. So the head is deliberately hidden, in my opinion. It's being concealed, in my opinion. I don't think that's an accident. I think it was intentional. I don't know the reason why, but it's suspicious. Because that could be anybody's body. You see, there's no proof. That's why that photograph is so important. That's why it's so conspicuous that there's only one photograph so far that has been released that shows his dead body, where he supposedly committed suicide. What's odd about the photograph is it leaves out the most important part of the dead body, which would be his face, which is the only way you could identify that it was the shooter's dead body. How do you know it's not anything else? It could have been somebody else's body. I mean, it's so based on that, in my opinion, it's a useless photograph. And to me, raises huge questions. Huge questions. Why is his head missing from the photograph? Because again, it's conspicuous because it's so unnatural. The first thing you would expect you see all the pictures of victims who were shot or survived, and there's very gross pictures with blood on their faces, so they're not worried about blood. Why was his head and face, and his face would have been, based on the way the body was lying there, he was lying on his back, so his face would have been, you would have been able to see his face. And the only way that you could even remotely identify him is you'd have to see a photograph of his face. But all you're seeing is a very oddly shot photograph where his head and face are deliberately missing, cropped out from the photograph, and no second shot is taken. That's very odd. That to me is flashing red lights. For what? I don't know, but it's flashing red lights. Number two is, even in that picture, the picture emphasizes the guns, the assault rifles and the magazine clips, or the magazine clips and part of images of guns. That appears to be the emphasis of the photograph. So when you're looking at the picture, obviously you're looking at the body, but you notice there's no head or face to the body. So your attention is diverted because the focal point of the picture that's supposed to be a dead body of the shooter, the real focal point is on guns and ammunition. To me, that raises the possibility of an intentional message being sent. Propaganda. For what reason? Well, there is a reason. Now, I'm not saying that suggests anything more than what I've openly said. But then as you continue to look at the photographs, what you notice is that the entire number of photographs inside his hotel room, the central focal point, the photographer is like just like a news photographer. He's after a particular message, and he's using the photographs, obviously, to communicate one primary theme. And that primary theme is not the shooter who's dead. The primary theme is it's picture after picture of the guns, of the assault rifles, of the magazine clips, of the ammunition, of the shells from all the bullets fired. So really, it's almost like a travelogue of guns, bullets, magazines, and empty shells. So that appears to be the central point of view. As you go photograph after photograph after photograph, there's the theme, guns. Well, of course, that's part of the story. The guy had 23, 24 guns, and he massacred a bunch of people. But there's no other photographs of the shooter. And then in the ending part of the montage of different photographs, I believe the last photograph in the series that is released is a picture of a gun store where the shooter supposedly bought some guns. Now, if you're releasing photographs from inside the shooter's hotel room, why do you end that series of photographs, which is the inside of the shooter's hotel room, with an external shot nowhere close to the hotel or the room, in broad daylight, of the front of a gun store where he bought guns? It's like you're making a movie. That's your dramatic emphasis. It's obvious that there's a hidden agenda in the photographs. It's all about guns and ammunition, and then it ends with the front of a gun store that sells guns. The subconscious message is obvious that this all happened because he could freely buy guns at a gun store. So the theme is take away guns, anti-gun, because it ends with a gun store. And that's all really, all the pictures, all, shows the furniture of the place, but with guns on it and ammunition. So to me, I can't come to a definitive conclusion except to say that there's a propaganda message mixed in there, whether it was intentional or unintentional. You'd have to be an idiot not to see it. Now, other questions arise. Again, going back to the statement by a law enforcement official saying it's just one person. There's this video, and we don't know how authentic the video is. We don't know if the video is credible. It appears to be, but that doesn't mean anything. There's a picture of the Mandalay Hotel, and you can see the shooter's hotel room, which I believe was on the 32nd floor. And the windows are smashed out. And by the way, these windows are very thick. So that's where he was, and there's conspicuous holes in the window, which I assume are there because he punched them out or whatever with an object so he could fire at the crowd, the country music crowd. Now, of course, even the secular media and psychiatrists have analyzed and said this was obviously a direct attack on what they call Americana, conservatives, and Christians, Trump supporters, many liberal, neutral, conservative psychiatrists, psychologists, analysts have observed that the people being killed were conservatives, Christians, people who believe in America, and Trump supporters. So his enemy was a particular group: Christians, conservatives, and people who voted for Trump. Also, we know that there was Antifa literature and publications in his car and other places. And that's the group, Antifa, meaning anti-fascist, which is a communist revolutionary group being financed by a hidden network of very wealthy individuals who some people believe are some of these super billionaires that use various foundations and front organizations to fund the Antifa movement. And what is the Antifa movement? They're about creating a revolution or a race war in America. They're using Marxist communist strategy, and they want to initiate a revolution. The purpose in that is so that martial law can be declared, and then you have a police state. Now, what better way to do that than to deliberately attack a country music crowd that's Christian, conservative, predominantly white, and Trump supporters? What that does is, after the shock is over, that plants tremendous seeds of anger, rage, and among some people, a desire to get payback against Antifa or whatever. So if we analyze this carefully, this could have been an attempt by Antifa or who knows what group to provoke, to stir up, to deliberately stir up a backlash and anger and a counterattack, to deliberately stir up a counterattack on Antifa and other groups for the purpose of conflict, for the purpose of giving a justification for declaring martial law in a police state, to deliberately provoke white America, Christian America, Trump America to retaliate. Because right now there's all kinds of mainstream media engines stirring up anti-Trump people, liberals, Islamic groups. The media is stirring them up, stirring up racism, stirring it up. And on the other side, they're stirring up white people, conservatives and Christians, stirring them up for the purpose of conflict, which they gain by. The other thing that's very interesting is this girlfriend he had. And why did he go to Dubai? Why did he send, what was it, over $100,000 or something to the Philippines that just arrived a few days before? There's nothing in his biographical profile that suggests mental illness or crazy behavior. He appears to be very normal. But the question has to be asked, this behavior was obviously not the behavior of the shooter in his normal state of mind. So what affected his mind to cause him to do this? Law enforcement is suggesting that he was recruited by a terrorist group and they converted him. What that means is many of these terrorist groups or militant Islamic groups or whatever, conversion is really brainwashing and mind control. It's not really a genuine, heartfelt conversion to their cause. It's the implementation of sleep deprivation, cutting him off from everybody, repetition, and all kinds of what we would call the standard procedures of mind control and brainwashing. So you can flip a person's personality and make them something they're not, because they're under a very deep, in this case, it would be a very deep hypnotic or programmed state of consciousness. But it's not a heartfelt conversion to militant Islam or whatever. It's brainwashing. The girl could have been his handler. There's the possibility, but there's no proof of it, hypothetically, of a Manchurian Candidate type thing, where somebody really got a hold of his mind, and through the use of powerful drugs like LSD and really what we would call the more hardcore brainwashing techniques, you can program an individual to do something, and then they don't even know it. It's buried in their subconscious, and then you can trigger them to go into action to do something that they've already been programmed to do. You can trigger it through an expression, a picture, a word, a ringtone, anything, and it'll activate the subconscious programming, like in the movie Manchurian Candidate, to assassinate the president. But in most of the speculation regarding like Manchurian Candidate assassinations, the norm appears to be individuals that were already weak in terms of their psychological stability, their behavior, etc., etc. In other words, the typical person, it appears, their biographical information would suggest psychological problems, intense psychiatric medication, and kind of like, they're damaged psychologically to begin with, and they're more easy to put under mind control. That doesn't mean that science has not been developed to where they couldn't potentially take anybody and do that, but he doesn't appear to me to fit the norm of like Manchurian Candidate mind control. So I discuss those techniques of mind control in Conquering the Matrix. So that makes him somewhat of an exception. Plus the sanity, or the apparent sanity, based in his biographical history. So we have various themes going on here. Immediately, almost as if on cue, Hillary Clinton and others, the propaganda parrots, the comedians of late night talk show hosts and stuff, all screaming for gun control, as if gun control would have solved this problem. Like I said on yesterday's program, somebody who wants to commit a crime is going to break the rules. He would have got guns illegally. It's like a non-issue. It's very important to notice that his target, the country music people, that right after some patriotic song or something was sung, the shooting broke out. That sends a message of hostility towards a particular demographic group in our nation. And then we have this, again, going back to this odd video. We don't know if it's a legitimate video or somebody made it up and put it on the internet. We don't know anything about the credibility of the video, but there is a video on the internet of the 4th floor of the Mandalay Bay hotel. The shooter, of course, was on the 32nd floor, but on the 4th floor, you can see a video of rooms where it's barely noticeable, but you'll see these flashes of light, which look exactly like the light emanated from automatic assault rifles shooting or firing from a dark room. They're little pulses of light, and they are synchronized to the sound of gunshots. And it's subtle, but it's definitely definitely, if it hasn't been artificially generated, it's something that should cause concern and further investigation, because if that video is credible, it is proof that there was at least another gunman or multiple gunmen, because it's clearly bullet shots that are coming from that room, if that was not like photoshopped or something like that. Then the final thing that we need to realize about this particular gentleman is that many people knew him. He had a neighbor who was a friend, an ex-Marine. Apparently, this ex-Marine friend, the shooter and him would hang out, gamble together, have a couple of drinks together, spend time together, and they would talk a lot. And the ex-Marine said the guy acted, like totally normal. He knew him for years. The shooter didn't express political views or an ideology on anything, or anger or whatever. He was just like normal. And so the ex-Marine, who's his neighbor and friend, said there's no way, and this guy defines himself as somebody who's definitely not a conspiracy theorist. This ex-Marine friend of his says there's no way that this guy could have been the shooter. Okay, interesting assessment. The brother says he's totally shocked. There's no way his brother could have been a shooter. His brother strikes me as, this is personal, his brother strikes me as somebody that may be a nice guy, but I'm not necessarily sold on how perceptive he is. But maybe he's very perceptive. Maybe he's accurate in his contention that he's shocked that his brother would do this. Now, he may be right, and the ex-Marine may be right. In the shooter's normal mind, he would never have been capable of doing these things. It would be totally contradictory to his core personality. But a game changer would be if somebody got to his mind and radicalized him, as some of the law enforcement investigators have proposed. If some militant extremist Islamic group or Antifa or any number of groups got a hold of him, that conversion process is a brainwashing process. And many of the higher ups in these ISIS groups and stuff, they know a great deal about mind control and the methodologies of scientific mind control. And if they were given X amount of time with him, perhaps when he flew to Dubai, or it could have happened in the United States, they could have isolated him and put him through a very intensive scientific mind control procedure in which they basically hijacked his mind. And outwardly, he appeared like the same guy, but embedded in his subconscious, he was totally different. And that may have been what happened. Somebody grabbed his mind, hijacked his mind through mind control, and all of this behavior that would not normally be even remotely possible for him, all of a sudden erupts in a nightmare. Now, we're going to investigate this more in following programs of the Paul McGuire Report. You will have articles and information. You can go to paulmcguire.us, paulmcguire.us. But one final thought emerges, and that is whatever happened, and it is not clear what happened. There's a whole lot more to this story, but it is impossible to not conclude that the pictures, the way they were assembled of the interior of the hotel room, whether that was done by law enforcement or the press afterwards, I don't know. But that montage of pictures of the interior of the shooter's hotel room, where you conspicuously cannot see his head or face, is a very odd photograph. And then as you look at picture after picture inside the hotel room, it's all about image after image of guns, bullets, magazines, and shells, on different things, couches, tables, the floor, whatever. It's the emphasis, the focal point of the entire series of pictures is not to tell us a story on the interior of what happened in the room and with the shooter, who there's a dispute because there are reports that say that he committed suicide before law enforcement got there, and other reports that said he was shot when law enforcement got there. They killed him. And then this female companion of his, somebody is using part of what happened to promote gun control. It's clearly evident in the pictorial essay that ends with him, not him, but a picture of the gun store. This is being used as an anti-gun message, and somebody is trying to communicate a message of an attack on Trump supporters, Christians, and conservatives. So there are many, many trails to follow, and we will continue to do that. I just want to encourage you to use the mind that God has given you. Don't take anything at face value. Think for yourself. Just because some, media personality or expert says something doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. Think for yourself. Use your own God-given perception, because Jesus Christ said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." God bless you. I'm Paul McGuire. Visit paulmcguire.us. And if this program has been helpful to you, or you think it may be helpful to somebody struggling for answers, then send them for free an archive of this program. Visit paulmcguire.us.